Hello and welcome to Question Time. I'm Benga Ashiru. It's been a very challenging period for the Nigerian economy. In trying to steer the nation out of the woods, the federal government did introduce the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP. How far has the federal government gone with this ERGP? With the delay in the passage of the 2018 budget, what are the chances of the federal government's Marshall Plan in addressing the challenge of food security, unemployment, inflation, and the yawning gap in Nigeria's infrastructure? The delay in the passage of the budget has put the fate of millions of Nigerians in a delicate balance. Who is responsible for the delay in the passage of the budget? Join us in this interview with Nigeria's Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udo-Udoma.
We are concerned. We had hoped that when we submitted the budget at the beginning of November, that maybe by the end of the year or sometime in January, it would be passed into law. Because over time, we want to move back to January to December budget cycle. And so we were optimistic initially, but things have slowed down a bit, and we are concerned.
But what are the implications? Because experts are saying that this lack of implementation of the budget, the delay in the passage of the budget, has direct consequences for economic growth.
Yes, it does. And so we've been engaging with the National Assembly, and they have promised us that they are going to now accelerate work on the budget.
So, but who takes responsibility for this delay?
Well, you know, from the executive, the president submits the budget. After that, it becomes the responsibility of the National Assembly. So if there's anything missing or anything that they require from us, all they need to do is ask, and we'll give them the support.
Isn't this a serious indictment that the MDAs are not complying with the budgetary procedure?
Well, I'm a little surprised because all they have to do is summon an MDA. There has been no report to me as the Minister of Budget about any particular MDA that hasn't come. And if you recall, when the Deputy Chairman of the Appropriations Committee of the Senate expressed this position on the floor that some MDAs had not turned up, the then Director General of the Budget issued a statement to say he's been in touch with them, and he has repeated that we are available. They should give us a list of anybody who hasn't turned up, and we'll follow through to make sure they turn up. And that is, we're available to follow through to make sure that anybody that they want to see, that they can see the person.
Let's get this clear now. The implication of the NDAs, 70% of the MDAs not submitting their input. Is it tantamount to the fact that they are holding the whole nation to ransom?
No, in fact, it's not the MDAs at all that the Senate was talking about. It is the government-owned enterprises. They have separate budgets. They are talking about government-owned enterprises. When the president submits the budget, he also submits the budgets of the government-owned enterprises. Now, but they are separately handled. Now, when they are dealing with them, a lot of times they may ask them to give further information or to change the format or whatever. And we have given instruction that all government-owned enterprises should stand by for any time that is required. But it doesn't affect the main budget. The main budget can still be passed while they're still processing the government-owned enterprise.
I was coming to that. I'm wondering why the National Assembly had to wait until they had a meeting with the president for them to disclose that 70% of the MDAs are yet to submit their budget. Why do they have to wait until that meeting with the president?
I don't think I'm the right person to ask.
No, because it's affecting your job. You are the Minister of Budget and National, and it will go on record that so and so went on during your time when you held sway as Nigeria's budget minister.
Well, the thing that will everybody knows and notes is this: We promised the 2017 budget only came into law in June. We promised that we would bring the 2018 budget earlier, and we worked on it. And by October, we took that budget to the Federal Executive Council. It was approved by Federal Executive Council, and then the President submitted it on the 7th of November. So that is the one that we are in control of. What happens in the National Assembly, definitely the executive is not in control of that process. But one thing I want to state is that we stand ready to give them any additional input that they require in order to process the budget. But I believe that they have promised that they are going to accelerate work on the budget. So I'm optimistic that they will accelerate work.
You submitted the budget in November, and 4 months after, you were never worried the budget you submitted to the National Assembly is yet to be passed? Every
week I engage with the Appropriations Committee and the relevant to express concern and anxiety and support. And that is what we have to do. So I engage with them all the time.
It's surprising to know that it was at a meeting with the President that they disclosed that 70% of the MDAs are yet to submit their
I think I've addressed that issue. I've addressed the issue.
No, I'm wondering that they never mentioned it all through your conversation or communication with the National Assembly.
But it's not an issue for me. It's an issue you have to ask the National Assembly.
No, because the whole nation is worried. It's like holding the whole nation to ransom. The expectations are high, tension is rising, frustration
but
is
I think
on
this issue, the important thing is that the National Assembly have indicated that they're going to fast-track processing of the budget. And I think we should leave it at that.
From the benefit of hindsight now, looking at what is happening now, doesn't it show that there is a kind of gap or lacuna in our budget processing?
Well, I don't think that this particular incident is evidence of that. Basically, the way the budget process runs, the budget is submitted to the National Assembly. The National Assembly now takes over the processes. They determine the pace of work. They determine who they should invite and when. That is part of the separation of powers. There's a separation. So the executive does its own, the National Assembly does its own. So really, most of the questions that you're asking me, I'm not in a position to address because they are questions really for the National Assembly.
Unfortunately, these are questions that also affect your office and the performance of your office.
They do, but now, I cannot answer.
The impression the public is getting is that the public is asking that who is playing politics with our budget. Some people have the strong intuition that perhaps the National Assembly wants something from the federal government, or the federal government wants something from the National Assembly, and it gives a kind of suggestion of a horse trading, or perhaps they need to settle some scores using Nigeria's budget or putting Nigeria's budget on the altar of that politics.
Well, I'm not aware. What I'm aware of is that we have done our job. We've taken the budget to the National Assembly.
Don't you think that the more you get familiar, perhaps, with the possibility of politicizing the budget, the better your performance as the Honorable Minister of Budget?
Well, all budgets involve politics. And so that's in everywhere in the world, budget making involves politics. And so you cannot depoliticize the budget. It's not possible.